So what's the most important quality that a leader can have?
Look, empathy, absolutely, and kind of willingness to be open to what's sort of showing up in the sense of what is emerging and what has some sparkle around it. What has sparkle, what is emerging, and then having empathy for whatever sort of unfolds through that process and through the relationships.
Welcome to Leading Notes, where I talk with musicians who are leading the revitalisation of social health in our communities. I'm your host, Melissa Forbes. Joel Carnegie is a conductor, performer and storyteller whose work spans live music, broadcasting and community engagement. Each weeknight he hosts the National Evenings program on ABC Classic, and his storytelling work has reached audiences worldwide, earning recognition at the New York Festival's International Radio Awards and the Wickers, a prestigious international award for audio storytelling. From 2015 to 2024, Joel was founder and head of storytelling at The Space Company, where he led the creation of music-rich podcasts, screen productions and live stage works, including the nationally touring double bill Stardust and The Mission, which involved over 200 local musicians across 45 cities. A graduate of the Australia Council's Future Leaders program, he holds degrees from the University of Melbourne, Swinburne and Deakin, with performance training in Graz, Austria. Joel is now the conductor of Awkwardstra Geelong, a community orchestra built on a simple but radical idea that making music together should be open to everyone. Sounds like the perfect guest for this show. Joel Carnegie, welcome to Leading Notes.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Tell me about Awkwardstra. How did it come to exist, and what was the need that you saw that sparked this orchestra?
So my involvement with Awkwardstra began after it had just started, actually. It had been in running for a little while when I first turned up. But it started, in fact, by a couple of musicians in Geelong who felt like they wanted a place just to come and play. There were other orchestras across the region, but for these two, they really wanted to, I guess, come to a place where there was, I guess, free of the, I guess, some of the culture that comes with music making, in the sense of this feeling that it needed to be right and perfect and on point. And so for me, in coming to the orchestra a little bit later, it was a matter of continuing to build on the work, I suppose, of its founders, which was Scott and Alexandra Popovic, who were, I guess, the instigators of the project. My sister Lauren Carnegie came on board as well, slightly before me. And Lauren and I started having conversations about her involvement with the orchestra. And I ended up kind of just turning up, filling in for a few weeks. And it was, at the time, I had just come off the back of a really big theatre show that had been in development for a couple of years, a main stage theatre show called Hell's Gates. It was a challenging production for all sorts of reasons, and I kind of needed to find my equilibrium again. And this orchestra just so happened to be the place where I could, I guess, turn up as myself, and facilitate a really fun musical experience, but one that I kind of didn't recognize from my previous training in Austria and previously in Australia. And so coming to it fresh off the back of doing a whole range of other things in my life and approaching orchestral music making, not through the lens of having studied it formally at uni. I did performance training and a whole range of other things at uni, but I didn't study conducting as a formal subject or as a master's, qualification or anything like that, the sort of fellowship programs or the way in which kind of conductors arrive in the podium. So for me, it was really turning up and sharing in the joy of music making, and that has always been really right at the heart of it. alongside wanting to build people's personal development and build connections across the community. So that's really what we're doing here, making music for the joy of it, for creating these connections across the community, and for offering people an opportunity to extend themselves and their music making.
I love the name Awkwardstra. I had to practice it a few times before we did this interview, because when you say it, it is a little bit awkward to actually say. And so it almost kind of mirrors perhaps the awkwardness that some people might bring into an orchestral situation if they're not used to it. Do you know what I mean? So in that sense, I think it's really clever, and it really intentionally kind of signals that this is a different way of making music within an orchestral scenario. Can you talk a bit more about that, and what does that look like in the rehearsal space?
Yeah. So we have people from all walks of life joining this ensemble, and it's an ensemble that doesn't require you to show up every week, but more often than not, everyone's there. So in a way, it kind of pulls its own people into its own orbit, if you will. And I think the name kind of attracts the people who are looking for this, which is not a sort of standard fare Tchaikovsky Mozart experience of an orchestra. We really dive very heavily into the pieces that are going to be the most fun to play, and the pieces that will generate joy in an audience too. And so it's been, I guess, quite a journey of discovering what the orchestra can do, and its I guess its capacity. We have people who beginning their musical experience, and we have people who have studied it formally through university and so on. And so we have a really wide range of capacity, and that's quite challenging for an orchestra when you're trying to manage a whole range of different I guess skills and experiences and personalities with the ensemble as well. But I think we come back to we find some middle ground in all of that, and we also try and wrap around a whole range of supports as well for people to help them wherever they might be, however they turn up. So that, for instance, might be rewriting parts. That's our monthly coaching program, where we have music coaches come in to run specific instrument sectional programs for us, and that's really valuable to build core capacity and skills for anyone who wants to show up. But I've found over that time, it happens every Monday night at a community hall in Geelong, and there's the same people show up, and so I feel like that, and it's been growing too, so much over the last couple of years. So I feel like we're doing some things that are right, at least for this kind of current time, where we provide people a chance to come and forget about their day. Don't worry about being perfect. Don't worry about feeling like you need to fit in, but just be yourself and just connect with everyone else here. And so everyone's kind of being themselves. Everyone's bringing their best, and I work with what shows up on the night.
Yeah. I mean, for you personally, you mentioned earlier being yourself as well, like this was a space for you to be yourself. Are you not yourself when you're working on something like Hell's Gate? Are you different?
I think in that context, I was working in a particular creative producing role for that particular show, and the originator of the show and creator of the show. I wasn't performing in that show per se, but for me, I think what I think Orchestra opened up for me, which was sort of a revelation in many respects, was kind of a return to music. Even though I performed in this theatre show, we toured around the country. I was playing trumpet and conducting that, and I've worked in radio for a really long time, in music radio, on ABC Classic and a whole range of other projects. This for me felt really real, and really kind of grounded in the community, but also I felt there was a real need for this ensemble, and I still feel that need this kind of current cultural, political, social moment that we are all operating in. So for me, yeah, I could kind of turn up as myself. I don't think I was not myself in other roles, but this in a way was a return or a portal or a window for me to show up in music in a different way as a conductor, as an ensemble leader, as someone who was growing, who's been growing this orchestra now for a number of years now. I think it's maybe 3 years I've been in this group. And so, yeah, so it's been a kind of really joyful commitment for a Monday night over this period, and one that one that I think I needed as much as the ensemble needed to. So yeah, so that's completely reframed how I think about music and what I want to bring to the podium when I step up on one too.
Right. Okay. So are you able to bring something to this? I mean, this is a different way of asking the same question, I guess, but in terms of you as a musician, is there something you bring to Awkwardstra that's extra or different to the other professional work that you've done?
Yeah. I think there's something really specific about this particular ensemble in terms of the wide breadth of life that turns up every Monday night and what happens when you bring together people from all backgrounds and musical experiences. There's just sort of something about that which is, I think, unique in itself. So in terms of bringing something new, I think the room itself creates a certain experience, but there's enormous trust, I guess, that I built over time with the ensemble, that they know that they're in good hands, and that my approach to working with them, I hope, is in the main fun and one that continues to be intellectually and musically stimulating for them to continue to show up. So I suppose in terms of my approach, my conducting coach, Ingrid Martin, who's a wonderful conductor and musician, who says, the podium never lies. And so, there's no one else that you really can be except for yourself on the podium. So I just bring it all in. It doesn't matter what the day is brought. We start every rehearsal with an acknowledgement to country and a recognition of recognizing that we've all had, whatever happened during the day, and let's kind of take a moment to arrive into the space and to arrive intentionally. And to remember that we're in physical bodies playing instruments that are physical. They're not digital. They're really right here in front of us. And you and me are in this same room together. Yeah. And just even acknowledging that at the front kind of then allows us to embody the experience. That then kind of kicks us off into whatever we're working on that given week.
Yeah, and those kinds of acknowledgements that, we're human beings in a space. We're not being mediated by a phone or something like that. It's almost like we have to remind ourselves that that's increasingly rare experience, and that when it does happen, it's really special, right?
Yeah, it is really special. It is really special. And the environment for this to occur is, really reliant on the passion, the commitment of the people behind the scenes making this happen. And so the entire committee, Scott Popovic is the president, Joel Carnegie, my sister, vice president, and the rest of the committee, we're really committed to creating an environment that meets the moment. And it's continuing to evolve, as no doubt the orchestra will too, over time as life evolves and people change and the world revolves around us and things happen. But I think the constant that we can bring is that this is a place where you can kind of forget about what happens outside the room, and you can turn up as yourself. We're going to play some good charts. and that's the kind of basis for the experience.
Yeah. So the orchestra is in part about removing barriers for people to participate in this kind of experience. What are some of the barriers that your members have faced, and how does the orchestra and the team kind of help them overcome those barriers?
Yeah, yeah. So look, I mean, people show up with a whole range of challenges that life throws them. We're not there to solve them, but we are there to support them in their experience of Awkwardstra, and sometimes that's escapism. Sometimes that's helping them by just getting through the door. We have a pass called the Orchie Pass, where people, they don't have to apply, they don't have to fill in a form. They can just say, hey, can I use an Orchie Pass tonight? And they can come in for free. And that's funded by other members of the orchestra through donation. And by other general donations that arrive through the doors. And so that generosity from other players to help support other players, I guess, is just an example of the way the kind of collective supports the individual with this group. So, financial challenges are, being faced by all of us, but we, try and do our best to kind of remove that as a barrier. It's not like a yoga class where you pay $30, and that sort of feels, kind of inaccessible, in many respects. But so we try and keep the costs low, but keep the experience high quality as much as we possibly can. And that we provide that wraparound support. As I mentioned earlier, we have a music coaching program that we've been running through the City of Greater Geelong support with their funding, on project funding, and that's for the last couple of years enabled us to run a monthly coaching program. So yeah, that's I guess another way where if you come to Awkwardstra, but there's some things with your instrument you're not quite sure on, that's how we can kind of help build someone's capacity, or help them, refer to music teachers, for instance, who might be able to offer them specialist support. There's also a string group which has emerged kind of organically through the process, which is led by one of our violin players, and she really helps everyone who turns up with a string instrument with additional support outside of the actual Monday night experience. There's coffee involved. I'm sure there's wine as well, but that's when the string players kind of get together. Then there's a whole range of other chats that happen. There's a whole range of WhatsApps that are kind of going along, and people connecting up or doing gigs, or, organising kind of music for the hospitals at Christmas time, that sort of stuff. So there's a whole range of sort of organic things that happen across the orchestra that have just sort of naturally kind of come out of this platform that we've built over the last few years.
Oh, it's great to hear about the ripple effects and how that kind of social network just spreads its tentacles out into the community in all sorts of different ways. Community orchestras can sometimes kind of struggle between this idea of, musical quality and making sure that you are inclusive. Is that a tension that you need to resolve necessarily, or is it actually a kind of generative tension where it allows you to work in different ways?
Yeah, I love that idea of generative tension, because it requires us to think about the kind of level of music that we go for, and for me, I'm always thinking about, can we achieve this now, or can we achieve this over time, and what's the level of commitment we need to put into a particular piece in order to justify its existence. So, we tend to sort of pick one or two, maybe three kind of key pieces to work on across the year that might be a real stretch for some people, but we know that over time that can be achieved. And there's a real sense of satisfaction and personal accomplishment when at the start of the year, like we did at this first rehearsal this year, we pulled out Mambo from West Side Story, and oh my gosh, it sort of fell down, which was amazing. So then when everyone recognised that no one had played for the last 6 months, or we certainly hadn't been together for the last 6 weeks, I should say, over time we've started piecing this piece together, and we'll end up, I'm assuming we'll end up playing at the concert later this year. But that's an example of a piece which at the outset was like, well, this is going to be a real stretch. But with the right levels of support and the right level of focus and constant attention on these pieces, we can achieve them over time. But that's also then balanced by having a range of pieces that I know that we can achieve too in a short space of time too, and so we can kind of balance the program with some challenge and some easier pieces that we can kind of get into the mix as well. So there's a whole range of factors that go into that. Music selection is a challenge for an orchestra of our nature because we do have that scale of ability, and so we want to make sure we have challenge for people who have got more capacity in the instrument, but at the same time, we don't want to alienate people as well. We don't always get that right, but I think we do try our best to sort of hit the middle ground somewhere and then provide stretch points for players or scores that can enable the more advanced players to step up in different ways through soloing or through whatever it might be that the piece particularly offers us, to kind of provide them with additional stretch points, whilst acknowledging that we also need to kind of bring the bottom end up as well. But I would say by and large, we have within the sections individually really collegiate dynamics. So people kind of help each other out within the sections as well, and we have section representatives who help sort of support the structure of the organisation. By just supporting internally within the section, whatever might need to be kind of discussed at that point in time. So there's kind of formal leadership, and then there's sort of informal networks that exist within the orchestra that help sort of support the activity that we're trying to achieve at the time.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really intentional about maximising the benefit for each and every person, regardless of where they are kind of in their own development. And so in that sense, Awkwardstra is generating a lot of value. And I want to pivot slightly here because you have a really strong background in storytelling. And I'm really interested in storytelling too, because I think to articulate the value of the type of work that you're describing, stories play a really important role. And I'm just keen to get your ideas on that because, we're constantly kind of thinking about the evidence of why something like Awkwardstra would be so valuable to the community. And we often then think about, kind of statistics or things like that. But tell me about the value that a really beautiful story can convey, about someone's experience in something like Awkwardstra.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of tackle it first from a repertoire point of view, and then I'll tackle it from a broader story perspective, because I'm really mindful of what are the stories that sit within the pieces that we're trying to tell, and do they kind of fit the current kind of zeitgeist or a hopeful future, and so a lot of the pieces that we do, I'm really mindful of selecting pieces that have this sort of framework in mind, but also then to have pieces that represent the orchestra as well. So last year we were able to commission Kim Dillon, wonderful composer, pianist, arranger, musician, who worked with the orchestra to hear the stories of the players within the orchestra. She then created a piece of music for us, which she then performed with us last year at our concert, our end of year concert, which was really wonderful. And we're going to be doing it again later in 2026 at the Geelong Arts Centre on the 17th of October for our big annual concert this year, where she'll be playing this piece, which is really exciting to be performing this with her once again. And that's, I guess, an example of the piece itself being a reflection on who we are. So not just the stories that are within the pieces, but this piece being a reflection on who we are. And so I'm also interested in other pieces that kind of reflect us in some way, that have our sense of personality in them. Quirky, offbeat, upbeat, fun. That's the sort of space that this group has been emerging towards over the last couple of years. And it may change direction, of course, but that's sort of just where I feel like what is needed right now. As for the bigger story about this ensemble, I guess I see the impact of Awkwardstra through the individual stories of those people who sit within the orchestra and the impact that it has on their life. And, I hear stories of people who have found, really wonderful connections in this place where they might not have otherwise had those friendship circles through the orchestra. That's a really important story to tell with this and many other community making practices. And I think in a society that has stripped away a lot of the places where people might physically gather to congregate around a certain thing, this feels sort of radical in a way that provides not only a place where people can come and socialize, but then there's also these other aspects to it as well. So I see the impact on the ground with this ensemble, and I feel like there is absolutely a case to be made when you put Awkwardstra alongside a whole range of other groups that sit across Australia, that operate across Australia. I think there's a lot of heavy lifting that's being done by a lot of organisations doing quiet and often underfunded work.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's where, the stories of impact that you're talking about at the individual level are so important. And I also love what you said about the music itself actually capturing the story of the group. I'd never really thought about it that way, but, I'm sure when Awkwardstra performs, people who are in the audience, without having to actually hear literal stories, can really get a sense of what being in an orchestra like that means for the people in the orchestra, just through the music, which is just such a brilliant way to convey the essence of what this work is all about. I love that.
Well, we haven't really had to do any marketing for any of the shows that we've put on thus far because they kind of tend to sell out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's sort of, a sign or an indication that that people want to kind of get in the Awkwardstra sort of experience too. And you can do that whether you're playing, but you can also do that as an audience member as well. And you can kind of take home that Awkwardstra joy, which allows you to be yourself, allows you to kind of just enjoy their music in whatever way which you want to, and sort of share in the collective storytelling that we're doing here.
Yeah, and big shout out to Kim Dillon, amazing musician, love her work. I'd love to see
Indeed.
You guys video something so that we could all see you working together for those of us who are far away.
I know. Well, look, it's our concert 17th of October at the Geelong Arts Centre. We've just put tickets on sale and they're basically like going like hotcakes, which is amazing.
It's great.
But another chance to work with Kim and it's a real joy. We've test run this now with a previous concert and we're going to come back and really deliver this time.
Yeah, so. Sounds amazing. I want to ask you a little bit about your own development as a musician and a leader. I was really interested to see that you'd worked, you've learned through a few acting methods, you worked through a couple of acting methods and you've done voice training with Chris Nolan.
Mm-hmm.
You're a trumpet player, right? And that's your primary instrument?
French horn is my kind of original instrument.
Okay.
Piano, singing, but yeah, it's that's sort of within the brass family. I did learn the trumpet for the Stardust Mission national tour. So I kind of it was like 6 months learn the trumpet and 6 months to go on this tour.
as you do. No, it was just really interesting to read about someone who, you're an instrumentalist. Obviously you do some singing, but what led you to want to learn about acting? And do you think that that's impacted the way that you practice as a conductor and a music leader?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, acting is about breath and emotion. And
singing too.
And singing too. And if you aren't able to hide on the podium, then you are being, everything about you turns up, on the podium. And so So to have faculty of breath and faculty of accessing emotion, that they're all really interesting. I guess opportunities to sort of hang my hat on certain things and certain techniques. For instance, I can run a kind of warm-up routine pre-concert that will kind of take people from 100 down to sort of 20-30%, which is where you kind of need to be in order to sort of feel stable.
Yeah.
So I can do that through acting methodology, and through mindfulness methodology of grounding people before going out to sort of generate that, like, that certain, that good level of like pre-show buzz.
Yes.
Without it kind of then falling out into anxiety and nerves. And that kicked off because we had to open Taco Festa, which is, the largest street festival in Australia. 100,000 people come down Packington Street in Geelong every year, and we were opening it as a flash mob. And the ensemble was pretty new, really, and it was kind of our first big public moment, and there was a lot of nerves pre-show, and so kind of in running them through this, we're able to just calm and settle, and then we went out and did the job. So I guess being able to tap into these different modalities and methodologies has really kind of helped me understand I guess different facets of performance. And it also helps me, in working with actors or working with other performers, because I know their craft as well. And I think that's really helpful too, is when you understand what it takes to be a singer, to be an actor. It just really helps me in that role of music director to be then able to work with all these other people. But in the context of Awkwardstra, I think it's it's just having that or having these resources available that I can bring out and help guide people through a particular section.
Yeah, so it sounds like empathy is a really important quality to you in terms of being able to understand from another person's perspective how they can contribute. Is that, in your view, an important part of being a leader, or what's the most important quality, for example, that a leader can have?
Look, empathy, absolutely, and kind of willingness to be open to what's sort of showing up in the sense of what is emerging, and what has some sparkle around it. What has sparkle? What is emerging? And then having empathy for whatever sort of unfolds through that process and through the relationships that you have. So for me, I think they're the kind of key things. For me, just an openness and a willingness to sort of sit in the unknown and hold a space for people to make a contribution. And to value that contribution, to find ways to improve that contribution in a way that feels like, in a way that's about the kind of collective whole as well too, because this is an orchestra as a kind of ecosystem of many parts having to come together to achieve a kind of collective outcome that actually is quite intricate and very specific. And then you apply a whole range of other, I guess, elements onto this. We've spoken about already the variance in people's experiences and skill capacities and whatnot. So there's a whole range of kind of different things that are sort of happening. And so my brain is very full when I'm working with this orchestra. I can't really think about anything else because I have to be right in that moment and witnessing what's going on, making sure that I'm being clear. And I suppose that's another quality that I would bring into this too, is being clear in direction. and being efficient in the vocabulary that I use in order to offer that clarity and offer that direction. And so I work with Ingrid Martin, my coach, and we have lots of conversations around how to deliver, certain things, how to work on certain things in the most efficient way. So, not neglecting one aspect of the orchestra, but you could also apply that within an organizational context as well too. Sort of trying to sort of work on something over here, but also recognizing that thing over there also needs some attention too.
Yeah, look, there's so much there that is so valuable, Joel. The responsiveness, the openness to uncertainty and helping people kind of be okay with uncertainty, that instinct of being able to recognize, hey, there's something really interesting happening here. People, let's explore that further, and kind of guiding people along on that journey without them feeling overwhelmed, I guess, by the uncertainty, being clear in your communication. To me, there was another thing around, really understanding how the individuals fit into the greater whole and constantly changing your lens from the micro to the macro and all of that kind of stuff. And then you mentioned this, organisations. I feel like organisations, the ones that I've been involved in my working career, aren't as good at that, honestly. Like the leadership within organisations generally, they aren't great with dealing with certainty. They aren't great around communicating change and things like that, where I find that musicians are just stellar at that stuff.
Yeah.
I want the musicians to be the CEOs.
Absolutely undervalued. Absolutely. Ensemble playing and then ensemble directing, they're kind of two sides of the same coin in some respects. As a player, you're contributing to the whole. As the leader of the ensemble, you're sort of shaping the whole and creating the space for someone to bring their contribution into that mix.
Yeah.
And so in some respects, when you've got the score and you've got 30 lines, there's kind of a lot of complexity that you're needing to, follow along in real time, cue people in, offer support, tweak something if something's not quite right, keep from tempo. There's a whole range of, I guess, functions that are happening all at the same time. And so, so I do need to keep that, a lot of balls, a lot of plates spinning at once to kind of keep this ship moving. But since doing it, I don't know. It's really to see the level of excitement and satisfaction of achieving something which someone thought was impossible before. That's really gold. That's really gold. And for someone to say, I didn't think I could do that, but now I can. There's something really empowering about this type of work.
Yeah, for sure. And to me, that's, again, another kind of core component of leadership is the ability to work with people to show them that they can do things that they never thought were possible.
Yeah.
And that's just so incredibly gratifying for everybody concerned when people have that experience of like, I never thought I could achieve that, and I did it. As the conductor, you play a really huge role in enabling that for people.
Yeah. Look, it's a really satisfying. It's a really satisfying role to play. That's for sure.
So, what would you say to a young musician who might be listening who's interested in this kind of work? Like, are there opportunities out there, do you think? What would be the challenges for someone to consider if they were interested in working community music? Can you just talk a little bit about that for people who aren't working in this space but might be interested?
For sure. I think you have to start where you are, actually, and and who's around you that might, you may be able to start off a very small ensemble, a very small offering. Nothing, I don't think, starts big. Or it only starts big when there's an extraordinary amount of money behind it from the outset. But, for people who aren't in that space, then just starting something small and building out from there has been, in my experience, how any of the creative projects, as large as they might have become, have began from. They begin from very small ideas that just require continual nurturing and thought, and over time, you start bringing people into your orbit around this idea, and then suddenly there's enough momentum for it to actually exist in the world. And so I think just starting where you are, in the place where you are, and are there existing organisations that require support, or if not, is there one that you could create, and one that you could bring some friends together, or start advertising locally and just see what kind of comes out of the woodwork. These things are always going to change too over time and become something. They might become something that wasn't the original intention, but having a really strong sense of what are we trying to do, what is our mission, what is the vision here, and what are our values as we do that. I think the values piece with Awkwardstra has been, I guess, the framework in which we have that kind of allowed us to grow whilst also what's the right way to describe it? I suppose without us kind of falling out or falling off the bandwagon. We've kind of kept consistent around the things that are important to us, and that's around joy of music and around personal accomplishment and so on, which are some of the things that we've already discussed today. So being clear on the values of what you're trying to do, I think, offers a framework for other people joining to recognize and to understand what the sandbox is, that you're then joining and participating and making a contribution to.
Yeah. I love your advice of, starting from where you are. It's kind of a slight variation on some other really good advice that I heard at a conference, actually, where the speaker said, just play a little bit bigger from where you are.
Yeah.
Just push yourself a little bit more from where you are. And I was like, I can do that. It makes it feel really like there's possibility there, but you don't have to conquer the world. You just have to just do a little bit more.
No, it's funny. I get really excited about big picture thinking and this could be something, X, Y, Z. I sort of go to the big, and then I'm like, oh God, that feels so overwhelming. Okay, what do I need to do? Come on, let's take it all back in. What's the next step? What is the next step that might enable that longer term vision? Having that long term vision is actually really helpful. But what is the next step that I can take to support the journey of this bigger entity that is, that has the potential to grow around me and the community in which I am operating in. And it's taken me a little while, I guess, to come to this, but to recognise the importance of this work wherever you are. It doesn't have, just because it's not happening in Sydney or Melbourne doesn't mean that it is not of value. And it doesn't really matter where the activity is. If you're doing the work, if you're connecting people, if you're providing opportunities for people to play and to share and to grow, and to have fun together and to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, then wherever it is, that is the height of success.
Yeah, and look, as someone who's also based in regional Australia, all I can say is hear to that, for sure.
Look, as someone who's always lived in Melbourne or Sydney may not agree with me, and they might just go, "Oh God, a bit of country bumpkin, right?" But I'm sorry, but
no,
this is, I think it's good to be able to recognise that great things can happen anywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. Joel, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and unfortunately our time is coming to an end. But I have 3 questions that I ask all of my guests. And so the first one of those is, what's the most important lesson about human connection that music has taught you? What's the most important thing about human connection and music?
I think music allows us to feel. And when we can feel, we can connect with other people. And we're in the business of feeling making and moment making. And so for me, I think that's where the power of music lies. It's in the moment that we collectively share.
Yeah. And if you had to choose one song out of all the songs to bring a group of strangers together, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to pick one that we did, and one that sort of became an anthem at Awkwardstra, which was Aretha Franklin's R-E-S-P-E-C-T.
Awesome.
Because it really, I think, it's an anthem of defiance, and it's an anthem of power, of representation, of strength, and it's just a great fun piece to play. And we did it at the Flash Mob at Paco Festa, and we've done it in our concerts, and it's always a good one. So I think I'll put that one down.
Great choice.
And it goes to our kind of, our values too, of respecting all contributions. They're all welcome.
Yeah. What would you like to achieve with one wave of your magic wand? Or your baton?
Baton, indeed. Oh, look, I mean, I would love this work to be recognised and funded, and to be kind of integral part of any and every community, actually, whether it's a choir, whether it's an orchestra, or some other way that everyone can get together to play music, or it's a brass band. I mean, brass bands do a lot of heavy lifting themselves right across the country in terms of community and also teaching too. But the reality is that this whole sector is built around people recognizing the value of this work, and yet the way in which these funding models operate and the way in which, I guess, culture is valued, this is either perceived to be as a bit not worthy of or lacks the prestige of. But actually it's the realest form of music making, and I think it's probably going to be the form of music making that's going to last whatever calamity and a catastrophe that awaits us tomorrow. Funding will rise and fall, and organizations will rise and collapse, but people getting together playing music is eternal, and for those who are providing the structure for that to happen are actually creating guardrails and forms of resilience and resistance to other nefarious forms of structure that exist in the world. So for me, it's more of this, please, and fund it well, because this is doing a lot of really brilliant community binding work, which I think we need more of rather than less.
Bravo. Joel Carnegie, thank you for making music that matters and for being my guest today on Leading Notes.
Thank you so much. It's been great to chat to you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make sure to leave a review. I acknowledge that this podcast is produced on the lands of the Gayabal and Jarawar peoples of the Toowoomba region, and I pay my respect to all elders. Mark Schultes produced the original music for this podcast. Thanks for listening. Now go make music that matters.